Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of full council. Today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the council website for public listening. Could I remind councillors to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing S or speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute rather than raising your hand. If you're in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Those in the room without access to the Microsoft Teams chat, if you wish to speak, please catch the attention of Nick Evans, who will enter your request into the chat. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time, writing leave in the Teams chat function, and then join when you rejoin the meeting, so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. Members may notice when calling members to speak, I will refer to them formally and using their title. For example, Councillor Smith. We don't seem to have, I don't think we've got a councillor, no we don't. So that is clear who councillors are, and by process of elimination, who the officers are. This is for the benefit of our audience watching the live streaming. So firstly, we were all saddened to hear of the recent passing of ex-councillor Lorna McGowan BSc, who died peacefully at home on 25th of January 2024, aged 76 years. Lorna served as an SNP councillor from 2007 to 2012. Lorna will be sadly missed by all her family and friends, and we send our condolences to all her loved ones. Can I invite Councillor Tracy Little to say a few words?
Thank you, Convener, and morning members. Yes, I'd like to also call to council attention the sad passing of the former Dumfries and Galloway elected member Lorna McGowan on the 25th of January. Lorna was a Locker ward councillor, as you said, between 2007 and 2012, and contributed enthusiastically and diligently in all aspects of her ward and council duties. I knew Lorna quite well. She was a very passionate person, passionate about her friends and family, her work as a councillor, her region, and very much her country. She'll be sadly missed by all those who knew her, and I'd like council to extend our deepest condolences to her family and friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Little. Can we also pay our respects to the late Tom Russell, who was a friend and fellow councillor. After a successful career as a teacher, including many years at Lockerbie Academy, he sought election as a councillor. His sterling work in the community of Lochmaben ensured him of victory. He served for 8 years on Annandale and Eskdale District Council and as one of the Liberal councillors who were in majority administration. He then went on to represent Annandale North and Dumfries and Galloway Council for a further number of years. Tom was well respected and continued to be active in the local community for as long as his health allowed him. Could I ask Councillor Richard Brodie to say a few words if Richard's present? No. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Convener. As I said, I think it's your tribute there paid. He was a friend and colleague of mine for many years, and he did sterling work in the Lochmaben community. He was a respected teacher at Lockerbie Academy for many years, and he will be sadly missed by his friends and his family. But thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. I would like to take this opportunity to celebrate Colin Beattie, who retired after 53 years' service with education. Colin spent his entire career within the same service. Colin's story is unique, as he was about to leave Kirkcudbright Academy at the age of 16. An opportunity arose within the school as a school science technician, so in essence, Colin never actually left Kirkcudbright Academy. He quickly moved on to become a school network administrator across the region, and as the school ICT support technicians became a centralised team, Colin spent most of his time in all of our schools within stewardship, assisting the team across Wigtonshire as well. His knowledge and enthusiasm was invaluable to the team, and we wish him well in this retirement. Could I now invite Councillor Archie Dryborough to say a few words about a nomination that the Council has received?
Thanks, Convener. Members. This hot off the press yesterday from the Veterans Awards team in Wales, who do the judging of Veterans Awards Scotland. And obviously, we can't have Scotland judging Scotland. But I'm pleased to advise that after a couple of applications that went forward last week, over the weekend, the judging panel has agreed that the council itself has met with the finalists, the 6 finalists of shortlisting for Employer of the Year for what they do for reserves, Cadet Force adult volunteers and veterans as well. And also I'm forward for 2 nominations as Lifetime Achievement and Role Model of the Year. There's a sad fact in it. I think also in the area we've got the Veterans Garden again up for Community Organisation of the Year, and a couple of volunteers up there, Mark and Mo, who are in for a couple of awards away. So I think Dumfries and Galloway, with regards how we deal with the armed forces community in Scotland, is punching their way above. The shortlisting day filming, which everybody has a chance to do a sort of minute on why they've taken forward, happens on March the 13th, either at Edinburgh Castle or online. And the award ceremony is on the 24th, where we'll find out if we have won anything. So I'd just like to say well done, especially to the Communities Director for the support they've given me over the many years that I've been the Armed Forces champion in taking the council forward. So I'd just like to say well done to all of those that have made the finals.
Thank you, Councillor Dryborough, and I think the Council should be proud of all their involvement with armed forces and veterans. I think it's some good work that we do there. So today our agenda is focused on the budget and council tax, and we have 3 budget proposals to consider.
Point of order, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Convener. I want to raise a point of order in relation to an urgent motion on the future of Dalry Secondary and council mothballing policy, which you agreed to on the 13th of February, and the subsequent decision you made without prior consultation communicated an email on Friday to myself and Councillor McFarlane that you decided the motion was no longer urgent and it would not be included on today's agenda. This point of order relates to the competency of your decision. The standing orders are silent on the process for the convener to recategorise a previously agreed motion. Your decision has raised understandable and immediate concerns about what this decision means for the people of the Glenkens, including school pupils, and is attracting national newspaper and radio coverage. If you allow me the courtesy of a few moments, I would like to explain why this motion is still urgent and should be tabled today.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. It was only after a great deal of consideration, given the nature of the meeting being the budget meeting, the urgency of the motion. There's nothing within the motion that can't wait until the next full council. So on that basis, I deemed it was not an urgent motion, but I'm happy to let you speak.
Okay, this should just take over a minute or so, Convener. Convener, my motion arises from a decision of the Head of Education to recommend in a report to Education and Learning Committee on the 14th of March the mothballing of Dalry Secondary. This decision was announced without prior warning to ward members at a public meeting on the 29th of January. The decision raised significant community concern regarding the implications for education provision in the Glenkens and the wider socio-economic impact on the community. All ward members were present at the meeting, as was MSP Finlay Carson, who spoke out clearly against the decision and has since raised his concerns in Parliament. having had no response to an email I sent to the Director of Education on 9th of February, in which I requested a pause on the report to the Education Committee to allow consideration of a community impact assessment, I sought your agreement to an urgent motion, which I sent to you in advance, and you agreed to accept it during a meeting on 13th of February when Councillor McFarlane and the leader were present and discussion was held on the background to my motion. There have been a number of emails sent to councillors and officers by members of the Glencairn community, including parents, parent council, community councils and the Community Action Plan Steering Group, raising their alarm about the implication of mothballing and the absence of any meaningful consideration of community impact. However, since Friday, I've been inundated with calls and emails from constituents, including anecdotal evidence that despite my approved motion, pupils have been hurriedly encouraged to choose subject options at Castle Douglas Secondary. And I was alerted to an email from the Chair of the Education Committee to the Community Steering Group in which he speaks about mothballing as a fait accompli. In your email on Friday, Convener, you said that no report on mothballing will come to the March or May Education Committee, but no explanation was given on why and what advice you took from officers prior to your decision. I would like to hear the thinking behind your decision and the intended way forward prior to the end of school term. Members will be aware from articles in the Herald and on BBC Radio, which mean that school mothballing in our region is now a national discussion point, and preventing my motion to be tabled today will be hugely damaging to the Council's reputation. And astonishingly, to make matters even worse, I learned from a post on Twitter last night that the Council had made a press release to the effect that the Council didn't have a mothballing policy for secondary schools. So on what basis have the Education Department decided to mothball to the Dalry Secondary to the March E&L Committee? And finally, I was made aware by a constituent that they've spoken to a civil servant at the Scottish Government who is quoted as saying that the Council's use of mothballing policy was the most aggressive ever seen. And that same civil servant has subsequently written to the Head of Education prior to a briefing for the Cabinet Secretary, Jenny Gilruth. I submitted a request via the Chief Executive for a copy of this correspondence and the reply from the Council, and whilst acknowledging that there had indeed been communication between the civil servant and the Council, I was subsequently told by the Director of Education that she can't release these documents to me and I should write to the Cabinet Secretary. Why have I, as an elected member, been refused access to correspondence held by the Council that directly affects my constituents? Convener, my motion is urgent, both in terms of the alarm amongst the Glencairns community caused by the actions of the Education Department and the decision to take my motion off the agenda today. To prevent the public from hearing it debated today could understandably be viewed as arbitrary and undemocratic. As such, I'm asking you to reinstate the motion, which is within your gift, for it to be heard under AOCB and be considered by all elected members. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to say what I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Much as I have a great deal of sympathy with your motion, the fact at the moment is that there is no mothballing paper coming to education in March, so therefore I have deemed this as no urgent, and I'm going to stand by that. It's up to me and 10.13 to decide whether something is urgent or not, and in this particular case, unfortunately, I don't deem it urgent. So,
could you allow me one more opportunity, very briefly?
Very briefly, Councillor Campbell, because we need to move on.
If you aren't going to allow me to present the point of order, insist, the paper to be, the motion to be considered today, I have to insist that you tell me where in standing orders does it say that recategorising of an urgent motion is laid out, and that you inform this meeting and the public who are listening in what officer advice you took, what was the process you followed in reaching your decision, to take my urgent motion off the agenda, because otherwise the decision, as I said, will be viewed as arbitrary, undemocratic and further damage the credibility of the Council. And your reference to 10.1.3, yes, it does give you the right to approve motions, urgent motions, to be on the agenda for full Council, but it says nothing about taking them off agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. The motion actually never reached the agenda in the first place, but when we spoke, I did say I was minded potentially to take it. I didn't say I was 100% going to take it, but I'm going to draw a line under that now, and I'm not taking it today. Councillor Campbell, I'm not taking the motion.
Despite my motion being approved, you're saying that it was not on the agenda. Officers have had since the 14th of February to write a report for that motion. Why has that not happened?
Councillor Campbell, I'm going to move on now. I'm not taking the motion, and that's the final decision. So we'll move back on to the budget discussion. All three group budget proposals were provided to the Head of Finance and Procurement by Friday the 16th of February and were made public and issued to all Council members on Tuesday the 20th of February 2024. The budget comprises both revenue and capital proposals and have been submitted within the agreed timescales. I draw members' attention to Standing Order 10.2.6, which states that the mover of a motion or amendment shall speak for no more than 5 minutes. Each succeeding speaker shall speak for no more than 2 minutes and shall speak only once in the same discussion, unless to call attention to a point of order or with the sanction of the convener to make an explanation. I shall therefore permit the authors of the proposed three budgets, the administration group budget, which will be leader Councillor Gail McGregor and Councillor Ivor Hislop, the SNP group, Councillor
There's some items on the agenda you've missed. Thanks.
Pardon?
There's some items on the agenda we've not gone through yet.
Well, this is just the introduction, Councillor Stephen. We're just moving to that. We're just kind of setting out the terms of the scene for how we're going forward. So, SNP Group, Councillor Stephen Thompson and Councillor George Jameson. Labour Group, Councillor Callum Wilson and Councillor Linda Dorward. They will be available to answer questions in the context of the budget. If any of the above wish to answer a member's question, they should indicate their wish to speak in the same way a council officer would if they wish to answer questions on a report to us. For the avoidance of doubt, these members are also entitled to make a contribution to the debate. If a procedural motion is proposed, the debate on the budget motion will be suspended to enable the procedural motion to be debated and a vote taken. Contributions to the debate on a procedural motion are separate and won't prevent a member from making a contribution in the debate on the budget motion, but the provisions of Standing Order 10.2.6 will apply. So we now move on to item 1 on the agenda, Sedgwick apologies and Chair's approval of members' remote participation. Vlad, can you provide the Sedgwick apologies, please?
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, members. I can confirm we have no apologies. We have 35 members present at the hall, and we have 8 members present on Teams platform.
Thank you, and I give my approval of remote participation. Declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest they wish to make? We'll go from left to right. Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Convener. It's a statement of connection in regards to item 5 and item 8 in my national role as Coastal Resources spokesperson.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson.
It's regarding item 9, the town board. I'm personal friends of a number of the applicants. In fact, one's a neighbour or was a neighbour, so too close. So I think I'll sit that one out.
Thank you. Councillor John Campbell.
Thank you, Convener. Good morning, everyone. Statement of connection again with item 9. I know at least 2/3 of the people through my role as an elected member. Just a statement of connection. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Little.
Same.
Councillor Walters.
I suppose after that I should make the same point about the number of candidates that I know.
I suppose that I should, in that vein, I should probably do the same, because I do know some of the candidates as well. So, if there's no further declarations of connection or interest, thank you. We move on to item 3, the minutes of the meeting of 14th December. Are we happy to approve those? Agreed, thank you. We'll now move on to item 4, Council Tax and Community Charges Restrictions on Voting, report by Head of Governance and Assurance. This is a procedural report presented in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, which came into force with effect from 6th of March 1992 and which may affect member voting rights on council tax matters. It is a legal requirement that a member who has 2 or more months in arrears of council tax does not have voting rights in relation to fixing the council tax and requires to make a declaration to that effect. Nick Evans is here to assist members with any questions. Do we have any comments? Thank you. So we're happy to note, members are asked to note the provision of the Section 112 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, which removes members' rights on the council matters and specifies circumstances and place the onus of disclosure on members. Happy to note that. Thank you. Item 5, the Budget and Council Tax 2024-25 to 26-27, report by Head of Finance and Procurement. This report provides information to assist members in determining the council's budget, council tax level and capital investment strategy for the 3-year period 2024-25 to 2026-27. As members will be aware through paragraph 4.5 of the report, the Scottish budget is still subject to development at a national level, and therefore I will bring in Paul Garrett, Head of Finance and Procurement, to provide an update. Paul.
Thank you, Convener. As you say, that there are some outstanding issues at a national level that impact on the Scottish Government's budget and on the associated level of funding that's available to councils. One of those issues, as referred to at paragraph 4.6 of the report, is the £45 million of Barnett consequentials funding which is being added to the Scottish block for next year, associated with the recent announcement of additional monies for councils in England. The Scottish Government had initially indicated that they were unable to commit to passing that money on to councils in Scotland. However, last week councils did receive a letter from the Deputy First Minister indicating that the intention is to pass that £45 million on to councils, and also to increase that by a further 17.7 million to effectively reinstate the 62.7 million cut that was reflected in the local government finance settlement that was initially announced. There are 2 caveats associated with that announcement. One is that it is dependent on the Scottish Government's overall financial position being better following the announcement of the UK Government's spring budget next week on the 6th of March. And also it has been indicated that the receipt of this funding is reliant on councils agreeing to the council tax freeze for 24-25. Following receipt of this information, I wrote to each of the group leaders and budget leads for the 3 groups who submitted budget proposals for today, and indicated that as this funding is not yet confirmed, and also distribution between councils has not yet been considered, that it was not appropriate to amend budget proposals that are being considered by full council today. But obviously, once we do receive that further information, I'll obviously let members know as soon as possible. But happy to answer any questions that members have on that or on any other issues reflected in the paper. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Paul. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Dryborough.
Just a quick question, Paul. I mean, you said it depended on the overall UK spring budget if we get this. So there's nothing being agreed yet between the Scottish Government and COSLA, because we don't know what that spring budget actually is. It makes a laughing stock of the Verity House agreement, by the way.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments or questions? Councillor Dorward.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you, Chair. and thanks for the report, Gillian and Paul. It's really interesting. I've got a comment to make on the budget setting process, if you'll allow me. A bit of history here. The Labour group at the beginning of this council term suggested the formation of a budget panel and a leaders panel as part of a collaborative process which would involve all political groups and none. These were accepted at full council when both the first and current administrations were formed and were never designed to be decision-making forums, but are a forum for sharing information and for discussion. So with reference to the budget panel in particular, because it's about the budget setting process, whilst we as a Labour group commend council officers for the hard work they have carried out in submitting generic proposals for savings from their directorates, this appears to have at times adversely impacted on the ability of officers to address requests from individual groups for the provision of specific budget templates for their own budget setting purposes. This has never occurred before and didn't occur in the last year, and I find that we're finding that the reason which was given was a lack of capacity in directorates to provide groups with specific templates. I would suggest that with over 8,000 staff in the council, that is not a very good excuse in terms of that. And as a group, we move that a review of the purpose and function of the budget panel is carried out with full elected member involvement after this budget setting process is completed. Thank you.
Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, Chair, I'm happy to second that. I'll just give you one example as well, and I've been involved in a few budget setting processes, and probably this is the worst example, and probably you can see from the content within the budgets that they're not setting the heather alight, these budgets. I'll just give you one example that, you know, and whilst the budget panels can still exist, there should be a process where groups are allowed to develop ideas and savings, etc. And I'll give you one example, and I think we requested information on some of the ideas we wanted to improve the council back in December, and it's with regards to cut and collect at cemeteries across Dumfries and Galloway. Now, this is something that's been raised before. There was a template that's been done before. In fact, back in 2013, I think it was Wigtown had asked for a report on the costings of that, and I think the costings were about 75,000. So back in 2013, the costs that were developed for the template came to about 300 to 400,000. So although we'd asked for a template to be developed and because work had been done before, we only received that back about 2 weeks ago, and the cost was 4 million now, or three and a bit. But you know, I know since in the last 10 years, you know, the Tories have wrecked the economy, etc., but I don't expect it to go up by about tenfold. So even when we asked for a template, we didn't have time to question the fact that it went from a potential 300,000 10 years ago to over 3 million.
Thank you. Paul, is there anything you want to say about assistance to groups on budget setting measures?
No, I understand the points the group's making and happy to support any review that members wish to undertake in terms of the role of the budget panel and the approach to the budget process going forward. Just maybe if it would be helpful just on that particular issue that Councillor Marshall raised, my understanding of the significant increase in cost that was reflected in information passed back to the group is that over that 10 years period, the need for new equipment to actually undertake cut and collect was obviously now a big issue, and that cost that you're quoting there was a year one cost. It was largely made up of the initial capital investment required in order to buy the new equipment to support the revised arrangements. So that's the main reason for the change, but I did liaise with the group on that and highlighted that I myself was a bit surprised at the extent of the cost, and it would need further review, but it was apparent that it would be a very significant cost in comparison to the previous figures.
Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, just quickly to come back, and thanks, Paul, but I think there was a significant capital investment that was required, a one-off capital investment, but still the actual cut and collect, the revenue consequence went from 300,000 to over 1 million.
Yeah, thank you. So we have a motion from Councillor Dorward, seconded by Councillor Marshall. Do we have an alternative, Councillor Stephen Thompson?
Not so much an alternative, but thank you, convener. I think obviously we set up these vehicles, if you like, for quite a sort of clear purpose as we thought at the time. And I think although we do get, I think 6 monthly or periodic reports in terms of how effective they are, I do think it's worth just putting that on record that we do take a close look at how we can actually improve these or whatever we choose to do with them. I think we should support that motion, and I would happy to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I do think all these structures need periodic review, so I have to say I've not got an issue with taking a view forward. Is it that view forward? Is anyone else minded in any other way? No. So we'll take that forward. So is there any further questions? No. So we've been asked to consider the information in the council tax report as part of the balanced revenue budget setting and associated council tax level and capital investment for financial planning period 2024, 26, 27. So we've considered that, and we've also had a motion to review budget panel. Have you captured that? Yeah.
Yes, through you, Convener, thank you. Yeah, just to confirm that there's agreement from full council in terms of reviewing the budget setting process, and I think that includes the budget panel within that as per the discussions.
Thank you. Dawn?
I just seek clarity because I think there was reference in Councillor Thompson's contribution to all structures and your response to that, so I just would like to be clear whether it's just budget panel and the budget setting process, or the review includes also leaders panel and business bureau. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Driver.
Thanks, Convener. I think Councillor Dorwood mentioned the leaders panel and the budget panel. So, you know, I think it's important that members have a review of any process that we're setting up. And if you want to have a review of all those processes, it's only been going for a year and a bit. There's no harm in doing a review of all the panels or whatever, but I think importantly, as part of Councillor Dorward's motion, it was also the leaders panel and the budget panel.
Thank you, Councillor Driver. Yep, I agree with that. So we'll now move on to item 6, which is the presentation of budget proposals. So I would call upon the leader and Councillor Hislop to move and second. Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, so it will not have escaped most people's notice that there is a risk associated with one of the budgets in terms of what could be considered a material change. So I'd like to be clear before we get into any moving and seconding that we know what we're moving and seconding, and if we need to take a closer look at that. I don't want us to be considering budgets that could potentially be a risk to the council, so I'd like if we could maybe deal with that bit first in terms of 15.4, if that's acceptable. Thank you.
Through you, Convener. Yeah, in terms of, I think Councillor Thompson's pointing at the potential for standing order 15.4, and in particular, as members might be aware, within the Labour Group proposal on page 30 of that, the savings option includes a pausing of the reshaping of the Chief Officer structure, which was previously agreed, including the funding within that, on the 4th of October 2023, and thus within that 6-month rule, which is incorporated within Standing Orders 15.4. And to read what states there within Standing Order 15.4, it says, no motion which seeks to alter or revoke a decision of the Council will be considered until at least 6 months after the decision was originally taken, unless it is preceded by a motion supported by 2/3 of members present and voting that there has been a material change in circumstances, and the motion should be considered. And therefore, that particular proposal, prior to it being moved, would require that motion as per 15.4. Hopefully that provides some clarity for members on that one.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Convener. With regards to 15.4, which Vlad has kindly read out, the Labour Group believe that there has been a material change since the Chief Officer restructure was agreed at full council on Wednesday the 4th of October. We believe the material change is that the budget settlement from the Scottish Government was worse than anticipated, and the unexpected council tax freeze Our long-term financial outlook is even bleaker, with every budget being proposed needing millions of pounds of cuts. There are also a number of other factors since the decision taken by full council. It has came to light that trade unions feel they were not fully consulted on the proposed restructure, despite guarantees in full council that they were. A number of complications in implementation have also came to light. Some of these are confidential, so obviously I won't go into any detail. I understand from conversations amongst councillors that dissatisfaction to the restructure has increased from those of us who voted against the proposals at the time. Even if councillors won't support the Labour budget, I urge councillors to vote in favour of there being a change in circumstances, as it may mean we can have a meaningful discussion on how the council can proceed and bring our staff with us. If members don't feel there has been a change in some circumstances, I would ask them why and why they support what appears to be a flawed chief officer restructure. Thank you.
Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Or thank you, Convener, sorry. I'm happy to second this. My colleague, Councillor Wilson, has so adeptly outlined her case pertaining to material changes in circumstance that I do not need or wish to repeat her arguments. What I would want to say, however, is that if these arguments cannot be recognised as a reason to take this motion forward to a vote as per Standing Order 15.4, then I would suggest again this council is in danger of appearing to wish to seek to stifle democratic debate. So I move this and second this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Crothers.
Just to get clarity, because my understanding when reading these papers, and apologies, I didn't think we'd have to use Standing Order 15.4, is that if 2/3 of the council vote for the Labour group, that would have been the conduit in which it would have been agreed at that point. But if 2/3 don't, then that's a simple voting process that would be implied. Just clarity in regards to whether that would be a competent way of moving forward. That would have been my understanding.
Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, and I supported Labour's motion at the time when the restructuring was being looked at, in that it gave the wrong message. It sent out the wrong message to our workforce and the community out there. I just wonder what material change there would be, and as Ian has pointed out, it would take 2/3 of the council voting today to allow this to go through. It's being used, 15.4, in terms of the passing of time, the 6-month rule, but there is still an issue in there in terms of us looking at that. I would hope that the council would accept that.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. That's my understanding as well, that we need 2/3. Leader?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any significant material change at all. In fact, our Director of Finance has just updated us that the Scottish budget or local government's budget will increase by 45 million, potentially through Barnett consequentials, and 17.7 million. So we're actually in a better financial position today, credit perhaps to Councillor Hagman for her negotiations, than we were when the restructure was actually agreed. So I'm not sure that the difference in finance is a material change.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks, Convener, and glad that we're starting to have this debate before we get into actual meat and veg of the budget, as it were. So I think, there's a number of material changes that you could put forward. I think we've just heard in the last report, and we don't have the detail of what the spring statement's going to bring. And I think while we're not really sure how to quantify that materiality just now, we have obviously indications and commitments, etc., but we don't know what the quantum is or how that'll transfer. So there's a number of potentially material changes that could be considered. Ultimately, I think what you've just said is that if 2/3 of this council agree there's a material change, there's been a material change. In terms of I think a well-respected officer once said to me, where there's a will, there's a way. So I think I'm not looking at anyone in particular, but I think we should just go to the vote. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Scobie, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, it's just on the point that the leader made, Councillor McGregor, there, in terms of the additional monies that would potential monies coming forward. And indeed, I listened to Katie on the Sunday show, and she did well in putting forward the case. But she made the point that again, notwithstanding that none of the budgets are seeking to go beyond the freeze, but nevertheless, I think she made the point that she hoped that no council would be penalised if they did go, and we know that Argyll and Bute has gone beyond the freeze and set its budget, and there's others to follow. Yet this morning, coming through to Dumfries, I heard on the radio that the First Minister has said that they will be penalised if they go beyond. And it's just clarity, perhaps, and I don't know if Paul's able to clarify whether indeed councils will be penalised, notwithstanding we don't have a budget before us that goes beyond the freeze. Will councils be penalised if they do set their budget beyond that? Because I would have thought there was an opportunity here in terms of the 144 million. It's a bad settlement for local government, but there would have been a chance to enhance that by allowing councils in a democratic process to set their own budget without having that imposed that they would be penalised. Just clarity in that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. I think at the moment what we're trying to establish is if there's been material change as such. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Convener. I respect the Leader's perspective in terms of she doesn't feel there's been a material change. We are saying we feel there is, and we're supported in that by our colleagues in the SNP, it seems, from what Councillor Thompson has stated. I think it's within your power to say that we go to a vote and we test that out with the Council to get a 2/3 majority or otherwise, in order that we can take our initial budget forward. I'll leave it with you, Convener. Thank you.
Thank you. That's exactly what I think we should be doing. So we do need to go to the vote. So, Vlad, do you want to talk us through this? We still need an amendment. Councillor Hislop, are you going to propose an amendment?
Chair, I'll second the Leader's proposal that there's been no material change.
Thank you. Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Convener. I appreciate I'm off the side, so not on eye contact today. No, I won't make comment on my national role. I wouldn't feel it appropriate, although I appreciate I've been name-checked in debate here. I think it is a really important point about being able to have that debate, and as alluded to by Councillor Thompson, there's a number of points that we could look at. I think one of the points I would want to raise is the fact that I raised the question when we were looking at the Chief Officer structure about whether the cost of that included any uplift for pay settlements, and at the point the Chief Officer said that it didn't, because those discussions, those negotiations hadn't yet concluded. Now they have concluded, but those initial figures weren't reported because we weren't in a position. So I would just move that is one of the many options that we could review this process. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we do live in a world of change. It's whether the change is deemed material, I think, is the question here. So, Vlad, do you want to talk us through?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Just to confirm, in terms of this is a procedural vote as per 15.4, which is quite clear that any motion that might require a relook at a decision within 6 months needs to be preceded by a motion and supported by 2/3 of members in order to be able to present that. And therefore, the clear motion at the moment is Councillor Wilson has moved is that there has been a material change, and that's been seconded by Councillor Dorward, and the amendment by Councillor McGregor, the leader, and seconded by Councillor Hislop, which is that there hasn't been a material change in circumstances. Are members clear in terms of the voting for that? Okay, we'll proceed to the roll call as usual. Convener?
Amendment.
Deputy Convener?
Amendment.
Councillor Bell?
Amendment.
Councillor Beretti?
Motion.
Councillor Blake?
Amendment.
Councillor Brodie?
Motion.
Councillor Doogie Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor John Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Ian Carruthers.
Amendment.
Councillor Karen Carruthers.
Amendment.
Councillor Dashbar.
Motion.
Councillor Davis.
Amendment.
Councillor Dempster.
Motion.
Councillor John Dennerley.
Abstain.
Councillor Dorward.
Motion, please.
Councillor Drybrough.
Motion.
Councillor Drysdale.
Amendment.
Councillor Ferguson.
Motion.
Councillor Giusti.
Amendment.
Councillor Hagman.
Motion, please.
Councillor Howell.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Howie.
Motion.
Councillor Hislop.
Amendment.
Councillor Ingalls.
Amendment.
Councillor Jameson.
Motion, please.
Councillor Johnson.
Amendment.
Councillor Jordan.
Motion, please.
Councillor Little.
Motion.
Councillor Lowe.
Motion.
Councillor McCammon.
Amendment.
Councillor McFarlane.
Motion, please.
Councillor Mayo.
Amendment.
Councillor Marsh.
Amendment.
Councillor Marshall. Councillor Scobie. Councillor Slater.
Amendment.
Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Stitt.
Motion, please.
Councillor Thompson.
Motion.
Councillor Walters.
Motion, please.
Councillor Wilson.
Motion, please.
Councillor Wood.
Amendment.
Councillor Young.
Motion.
Okay, and as members will see, the total for the motions 24, amendments 18, but for a 2/3 majority, 29 votes are required, and therefore the motion's not passed.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Convener. That was what I was expecting, and I would therefore like to ask if you would allow me to submit an amended budget, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move across to the Section 95 officer for advice on that point. It's custom and practice is that we don't potentially allow amendments at the full council meeting discussing the budget, but just a bit of clarity from Paul.
Thanks, Convener. Can I just check with Councillor Wilson that the amended budget is simply the previously submitted budget excluding that particular measure that's just been discussed?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Is that the case? Paul, have you prepared templates? Do we need to have a recess to discuss the way forward with that?
No, we do have an updated template or front sheet. I mean, I can provide members with a kind of initial assessment of the impact of the change, if that would be helpful. I think in the context of the overall budget proposal, it's a relatively minor change. It doesn't affect the legality or the kind of overall sense of the budget proposal. So I think from a financial and legal perspective that there's no problem with the amended budget being considered. Obviously, I also had the opportunity to liaise with the service manager who supported all groups on the impact assessment process, and he's provided confirmation that that particular measure that's been removed didn't have any impact on groups with protected characteristics, so it also has no impact on the impact assessment. So happy for the revised proposal to be considered on that basis, but obviously in full council's hands in that sense.
Councillor Driver.
Yeah, just to agree what Paul said there, we have in the past had minor amendments. This is a minor amendment of a £450 million budget of 155k that we're talking about here. So I would hope that you would allow that a budget amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I think now that we've had published budgets that the public's seen, we've seen for the last few days, etc. And while I am supportive of you allowing an amendment, which is fine, I think it would be appropriate at this point if we took a recess for 10 minutes just to see that, or whatever you deem appropriate, because we might want to reflect on what that how significant that is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I think we'll do that. We'll take a 10-minute recess. If Paul could circulate. Councillor Driver, you want to come back in?
Yeah, it's just with that recess, I'm just thinking the budget leads get together and have that discussion. Would that be okay?
Thank you. Well, it's just left 20 past, so if we meet back at 25:02, so that gives us plenty of time. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back, members. We've all had a chance to have a look at the amendment. Are we happy to accept that and proceed? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So back to where we were. Can I invite the leader to present the administration group budget?
Thank you very much, Convener. Well, it's certainly been a very busy and challenging year, and I'm pleased to state that the Council should be able to avoid making significant cuts to services in the coming year. This is in large part due to the sustained efforts of our finance staff and the directorates and service managers to manage the Council's resource prudently and under huge pressure, and I would wish to sincerely thank all staff, but particularly our finance team, for their tremendous efforts. I'd also like to thank Malcolm and Ivor as our group's budget leads, and all council groups and leaders for constructively engaging through Leaders Panel, Budget Panel and Business Bureau. These have been forums which have enabled frank and open discussion as policies and strategies are developed and then taken forward for debate and agreement at service committees, and I very much welcome the opportunity to review these structures. I'd also like to thank Councillor Hagman. I don't envy her task this year. It's been a very challenging budget and a very challenging budget process, but I would thank her for her unstinting efforts to try and secure a better settlement for all 32 councils, and for her robust stance in recent days and weeks in the press, and most recently on the Sunday show, which she's a far braver lady than I ever was when I was in that role. Now, the budget proposals that we've put together deliver a prudent, competent, balanced budget which protects frontline services. Our proposals contain a number of investments which supports local priorities, including a significant injection in funding to improve the condition of the region's road network, and as well as ongoing support for individuals, families and households to help mitigate the ongoing impacts of the cost of living crisis. Over the next 3 years, we will support an early learning and childcare provider rate increase, an increase in ASN transport provision, and support for our most vulnerable individuals and families through Children and Families Social Work. Now, investing in our region and its assets is at the heart of our budget proposals. We are committing significant funding to priority projects such as Dumfries Learning Town 2, Borderlands and the Regional Indoor Tennis Centre. And we greatly welcome recent announcements of significant investment from UK Government through Levelling Up and the recent Union Connectivity Review. And I commit to work in partnership with both Scottish and UK Government to deliver on the following exciting projects: Annan Harbour regeneration, the Transport Hub, Stranraer regeneration, Dumfries Town Centre Fund, and a feasibility study for the A75 and A77 road improvements. We are committed to delivering on our ambitious council plan, and I believe that our budget and our vision will enable us to do this. I commend my budget to the Chamber.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Hislop.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to formally second the budget laid down by the Leader. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the officers that were involved in the budget panel across all services that came to give us some ideas and direction where we can go and look to make a budget this time. I'd like to thank the members that took part in that. As well, I'd like to reiterate the thanks to Councillor Hagman. She's got a difficult job negotiating for limited resources, so we thank her for that. It has been a difficult budget, and I think given the parameters that we have to work in, the budgets that have come forward, there's not a lot between them, but I think I would like, happy to support our one as the way forward.
Thank you. Would any other groups like to propose a budget, move a budget? Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Convener. I think what I should say in light of the report at item 5, paragraph 4.6, and if it's with your blessing, with the Council's blessing, but I'd like to add an additional part to our motion. So obviously the substantives of our budget will remain unchanged at this time. So, but in terms of our paper, you should maybe have a glossy copy of that in front of you. you'll see that our 24-25 council motion has what's probably common to most of the budget proposals, the four, I suppose, stock agreements, if you like. But I'd like to add to that in light of, as I say, the previous report, along the lines of, and I can share these words if we need a few more minutes to consider that, that's fine, to agree to review the impact of the potentially significant additional funding that may come to this council following the UK Government's spring budget and details of any distribution agreed between COSLA and the Scottish Government, with a view to minimise the impact on our teacher numbers in light of the ongoing wider national discussions. So, sort of looking around the room, do you want me to provide that form of words so it can be circulated in terms of good governance? Happy to do so, but on principle, I'd sort of wait until you get the go-ahead, if that's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I think it would be helpful if you circulated the form of words. So.
If you just give us a minute to do that, convener, just talk amongst yourselves. Thanks. With your indulgence as well, so I'll send that to Vlad and Tracy if that's okay, but do I need to mention FPT, for example, or which committee that needs to go to, other than this council will review
that? Through you, convener, I would suggest at this stage is happy enough to leave it as for council to review that, and through governance we can look at specifically where that should sit. Generally would sit normally within FPT, and that's correct, but it might be that because of the amounts and so on and the significance around that it would be a full council decision, but that's for a decision to be discussed.
So if maybe just to be explicit, I'll maybe put at full council or FPT, whichever committee is appropriate. Okay. I'll get right on that now.
Thank you. We can, or we did. We can now see the form of words. Councillor Thompson, are you happy that that's an accurate reflection?
I mean, it's as good as you're going to get at this point in the day, convener. But I think it tries to capture where we're at, obviously, in light of the fact that we could be seeing additional monies. Thank you.
Thank you. So, is that you moved your budget or not?
Well, before Councillor Jameson rushes into second, I probably should say something about the actual budget. Obviously, we've gone through a process, convener, through yourself, and we will be reviewing our budget panels and leaders panel, all that. I take that, but a lot of the budgets you could argue are very similar, and I appreciate that the bulk of that commitment is to the staff that carry out the work and delivering the services for this council, and I think we want to try and protect that going forward as we try and transform. And you'll see that in future years, all the budgets, but I know ours in particular, has set ambitious challenges for through the Chief Executive and their team to deliver that transformation and bring back options to us as elected members. I think this has always been the challenge, because with the best will in the world, we're not experts in departmental savings, for example, but we are the ones that take the decisions. And I think it's key that we as elected members have those options in front of us, and we have certainly empowered our senior workforce to be able to have that energy room, energy room in the council to deliver that. I think this budget's framed in the light of things that we can't control, unfortunately. And it goes without saying that we live in an abundantly energy-rich part of the country. Yet the levers that control the cost of energy are out with our gift of influence. And it's no secret that that's one of the key things that causes a lot of the cost of living issues. And all we can really do is mitigate, unfortunately, at the best of times. So it's very much down to the UK government in terms of how it sets instructions to the Bank of England for interest rates. These have been a massive effect on people as well. And notwithstanding the energy side as well, in terms of Ofgem and all the caps that we hear about, that puts an additional strain on us in an already fragile economy, where the cost of the impact of those costs, if you like, to business as well as individuals mean that our supply chain's affected, our construction and house building's affected, all the things that we want to do through our partnerships, regional economic strategies, our own commitments with working with partners, and even our recruitment. These are challenges that we're not going to be able to address unless we've got the levers within our control, and unfortunately this time we don't, but that's something we would like to see in the future. But in terms of this budget, I think we've done the best we can with a difficult hand to play. And we've certainly wanted to prioritise support to cost of living, particularly after having discussions with the Tackling Poverty Reference Group. They've said that one of the biggest impacts for individuals was in terms of our top-up to the Scottish Welfare Fund. So we've tried to enhance that from last year. Small though it may be, it's still something. But we thought we'd better listen to the people who are affected most by these issues, and that's why we took that decision. Similarly, in terms of holiday food and food for those who are either in early learning settings or schools, we thought that was vital to protect, simply because those payments go direct to the families and they're then able to use that as best as they can. So it's as fair as it can be in that sort of sense. But around that, I think our key next step should be positioning ourselves as a council to be a stronger lobbying voice. And I think we're all familiar with the lobbying of the Scottish Government, but ever more we're going to have to be more targeted at the UK government, because we serve two masters, unfortunately, at this time. One would be enough, I think, but at this time we serve two masters, and we have to be much more effective at our lobbying for the UK government, because these are the big issues that affect us and create the causes of poverty, while we mitigate against the symptoms. So with that, I would commend this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Jameson.
Yeah, thank you, convener. Yeah, I'm happy to second this. In fact, I'm proud to second this budget. I think our group, and I commend our group for the total commitment and work they've put into this budget, because every single member really worked hard. And I'd also like to commend not just the officials, but also a previous administration that left us in a position that's stronger than most councils in terms of the financial ability to have some reserves to bridge the gap, if you like. We're very cognizant of the immediate needs to manage the budget for this council has been responsible, but also the needs of people who are less able to help themselves.
we're also very cognizant of keeping an eye on the future, and I in particular are probably a pain in the neck to some folk that we need to invest and not just save. We need to invest in the future. That means our capital buildings, we need to look at them very, very closely, which we have done, and also our human resources, how best we can assist the young people, elderly people, through social works, through education, through skills. So all of our budget tries to address all these things. So we are managing the current, but also looking ahead to the future. So I'm happy to second this motion.
Thank you. Yeah. Caroline, Councillor Wilson, do you want to propose the Labour budget?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Firstly, I would like to echo the thanks to officers and Councillor Hagman. Councils have been left in an impossible position after over a decade of significant cuts in funding from the Scottish Government. They've not only cut our councils' funding, but forced councils to freeze council tax. By freezing council tax, the Scottish Government has prevented councillors of all parties to take the decision to raise a little more in tax to put towards vital services such as schools, social care and street cleansing. Our communities are worse off as a result. In this financial context, the Dumfries and Galloway Labour Group have prioritised our young people and support for families during the cost of living crisis. The Labour Group are committed to doing all that we can to support families and residents across Dumfries and Galloway, and that is why our budget proposal will allocate over £1.8 million in measures to tackle the cost of living crisis. In addition, we were proposing that the Chief Officer restructure process was paused and reviewed, which would have saved the Council £155,000 per year. We do not believe that the most senior manager should benefit from a pay increase over and above any causally agreed pay award, when this Council needs to make around £14 million worth of cuts over the next 3 years. So therefore, we're disappointed that it was agreed that there had not been a material change. As well as putting money into early learning, the SN transport and social work, like the other groups, the Labour Group budget will ensure that teacher numbers are not cut, allowing our teachers and school communities to continue the fantastic work they do with our children and young people, helping to close the attainment gap and ensuring our children get the support they need to flourish. There are many areas that are similar across the budgets submitted today, but there are differences. The most significant difference is on the group's intentions. The Labour Group's intention was to put as much funding as possible into families and children and not into managers and bosses. Therefore, I move that we agree the Labour Group revenue and budget and capital budget and council tax proposal for 2024-25 and indicative budget plans for 2025-26 and 2026-27 as published on the 20th of February 2024, including investment, savings and fees and charges. Sorry, do I need to read the whole motion out? Because I'm thinking nobody else has done that already. There's me trying to be organised. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Dormer, do you seconding the budget?
Yes, Convener, thank you very much. Happy to second this motion. Thank you, Leader, for listing the significant capital investments contained in all group budgets, many of which were initiated by previous administrations. But what you didn't do was name check perhaps the highest capital investment in Dumfries Town, namely the White Sands Flood Protection Scheme, which is bringing circa 40 million into the Dumfries economy and was enabled by the Labour Group, ably assisted by colleagues from the SNP and Democratic Alliance. Our original budget has been, can I say, chucked, but there's no censorship re-talking to its content. Regarding the Chief Officer restructuring process, our group, with a couple of allies, has consistently opposed its implementation of a procedure that utilises extremely scarce funding to increase the salaries of our highest paid staff by up to £15,000. This is unconscionable in this current financial climate. In a region where earnings are lower than the national average, to be the only council to increase the salaries of our highest paid staff is not exactly the reputation we want and tarnishes the reputation we had for fiscal prudence. Moving on to something that we can debate, the Labour Group will always put our lowest paid workers and our children and young people at the forefront of our budget proposals. Regarding teacher numbers, we believe that ensuring that the £500,000 per year remains in the Council's budget to keep 14 teachers in post is the right thing to do. This is what our parents and our teachers want and need, and this is what they are telling us. We already have problems with recruitment and retention. Now is not the time to exacerbate this by cutting frontline teaching staff. Our child poverty rates stand at 27%, one of the highest in Scotland. And we know that any cuts to teacher numbers adversely affects the attainment rates, social mobility and health inequalities of our poorest children. Is this the future we want for our young people? The two other budgets up for debate, I would suggest, fall into the category, to paraphrase George Orwell, we are all equal, but some of us are more equal than others. Unlike these original budgets, not amended budgets, I hasten to add, ours is a budget which keeps 14 teachers in post, has put the most funding into the anti-poverty strategy and is focused on working for people. It's for bairns, not bosses. I second this motion and ask the Council supports our budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Open to any question or comment? Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I think all three have said that there's similarities in the budget. I don't think you could put a fag packet between any of the three of them. And it maybe says more for the budget panel and that structure in coming forward, although that's now to be reviewed in terms of the earlier motion. I'm looking at all three, and there is recognition for ASN transport. And when we spoke at least to two of the groups, there was a recognition in the budget proposal to move forward in terms of additional support needs in general. And I would hope that all three budgets, at least two, gave us an assurance that that would be included. Because I think it's anticipated that there'll be something like £750,000 of an overspend, which indicates where the money is actually needed. And I would hope I get that assurance, that will be taken cognizance of, and the mitigating circumstances that were explained to us will be in place in moving forward, so that those kids, those pupils who do need that additional support is recognised in the three budgets that are coming forward. And indeed, as Stephen has put the amendment to his budget, or included in his budget proposals, that we look at the consequentials that could be coming forward, rather than looking at mitigating measures, that we build that into the actual budget and moving forward. If these consequentials do. The only thing that remains, it may be a rhetorical question for this council, but I did ask in terms of councils being penalised, that notwithstanding none of the budgets is coming forward to bust the freeze. As I say, I listened to Katie at the weekend, but I also listened to the First Minister today, and it would appear that they are going to be penalised. It's maybe not for this council to answer the question, it will be rhetorical, but I think there was an opportunity for the Scottish Government to enhance the 144 by allowing the councils the free hand to increase the budget per se.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Convener. Thanks, Councillor Scobie. You and I have had many conversations about many things in recent days, weeks and months. And certainly there was a number of things that we would have liked to have contained within our budget, but they've not been costed yet. And I think it's fair that that comes through the committee process and that we get accurate costings. So additional support for learning is an absolute priority. We've had the scrutiny review through audit and risk, which has highlighted the areas that we need to be looking at, but we need to take that through Education Committee and ensure that if additional resource is required through the Directorate, that we're highlighting that. So it wouldn't have been prudent to put a figure in our budget at this stage, but there is a commitment to do that. And absolutely the same in respect of our school assets and the estate. Some of our schools are in woeful repair. The convener and the chief exec visited one recently. I visited a number, and there's a lot of maintenance required in schools. But again, we didn't have a figure, so we couldn't put that in the budget. So we would be looking for a comprehensive review of our school assets in respect of repairs and maintenance. Absolutely, yes. There's loads of things we want to do, but they have to be costed, and then the funding has to be found. But there's an absolute commitment to do that.
Okay. Councillor Jamieson.
Mr. Lord, guys. Yeah, thank you very much. It's just in relation to Councillor Scobie's comments. Councillor Scobie and myself and many others in the Education Committee have argued long and hard for support for ASN. the officers obligingly looked at the review, and there was a very extensive review which was very, very well done, very objective. And I just want to raise the point that 1.73 million over the next 3 years coming out of the education budget will be hopefully passed by the Education Committee, and that will make a significant difference to the number of ASN learners, and just as importantly, contracts to encourage learning assistants to become better learning assistants and to stay on as learning assistants. So that's not in the budget, but it's implicit in the budget. Thanks. Thank you very much for that. Sorry.
Thank you. Do we have any further contributions? Councillor McGregor, you want to come back in?
Yeah, sorry if nobody from the floor is wanting to come in at this point. It was maybe, could we pop Councillor Thompson's words back up? Because I don't have a copy of them. And I think it would be a very good idea to consider, particularly in respect of teacher numbers, any shift that we could have post the 6th of March and an announcement from UK government. And the same would apply to other things that we maybe want to do as a policy development, that the budgets are fluid, and that at a future full council or FPT we would consider areas that we're perhaps looking at savings from that we would then be able to mitigate, because we just don't have that information today. And I think most of us would have amended our budgets if we'd had the solidity of that funding. So I would be quite happy to incorporate his wording into my motion, but I'm happy to take it wider than impact on our teacher numbers and other pressures within the council. ASN, yes.
Councillor Dryburgh, you were up first, or you want to defer to Councillor Dorward?
I'll think it to Councillor Dorward, but I want to come back on Willie.
Thank you, Councillor Dryburgh. I appreciate that. It's interesting what the leader's saying about education, because the Tories have cut the education budget for 2 years in a row. So what you might want to do actually is all vote for the Labour budget, which already has these increases in it of 500. We've kept the money in for teachers, so you might want to consider that. Rather than putting an amendment in, just vote for the Labour budget, which already has that money in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dryburgh.
Thanks, Chair. And just to come back to Councillor Scobie's point, I think importantly what's been missing from this whole budget setting process is the democratic right of councillors to actually put up council tax and actually add to where we'd love to put some more budgets, and that's not actually happened. But I think it's clear within the three budgets there is a difference, and that difference is in the Labour Group budget with that £500,000 staying within and £1 million for next year and £1 million for the year after as well. So I totally agree with ASN is going to be a huge issue for budgets in the following year, but that problem is the democratic deficit that we've not been allowed to make decisions on behalf of Dumfries and Galloway.
Thank you, Councillor Dryburgh. Is there any further questions, contributions? Councillor Thompson.
I appreciate I've moved. It's just really to take on board a couple of comments. I think Councillor Jameson was helpful in pointing out elements in our narrative. Obviously, there's not budget lines associated with that, but I think there's a clear intention in our budget to set out our values, and I think a lot of this work has gone through committee, and I think it's really for us to set a course for how we take that forward, and I think we're very happy to do that. In terms of the amendment that we came up with, I think that was very much in light of reports. A lot of the chat today has been about what's a material change, and I think we recognise that we're in a sort of period of flux. Not by our making, so we're the little folk in the ways, try to diligently set our budgets on time and follow all the rules, whereas the Hegians are all faffing about, and we're waiting on their decisions. But I think with that in mind, that's why we've put together that amendment. It's our amendment to our budget. I mean, happy for it to be recycled and reused or whatever, but ultimately we've put that forward as part of our motion and it's been seconded. So I would just end on that note. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. Well, if there's Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Convener. Just with regards to the SNP's additional motion now being, as obviously Councillor McGregor said that they would move that as well. I'm just wondering why that is, given that these agreed savings were actually agreed in your budget last year. So I'm just wondering why the change today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, can we help out with that?
No, I think you'll find that we opted not to take those savings last year in our budget, but I think the one that you had on the table might have been different.
Councillor Wilson.
No, I meant it was the Conservative budget that had them in last year and they were agreed last
Councillor
year.
McGregor.
Thank you.
I have nothing to comment on that. That was last year's budget. This is this year's.
Thank you. Is there any further comment or question? No. Oh, Councillor Walter.
Could we just clarify then? The Conservative budget was presented as was, without that form of words. The SNP amendment was presented with that form of words, and it appeared to me that the leader seemed to be suggesting that they were trying to put that into the Conservative budget, which to me seems you can't do that because you've already presented your budget proposal as the motion, and the SNP have now put an amendment, and we have put a counter amendment. Is that not correct?
I think that is 100% correct. If that motion is being amended, the new motion would need to be seconded.
Yes, it would have to be seconded, of course it would, but the advice we were given from finance was that we couldn't pin down the exact amount of funding because we don't have the guarantee of it until the 6th of March. I'm suggesting in the narrative today, our budget has been tabled, that it's eminently sensible to consider a redistribution once we get clarity around the funding on the 6th of March. The initial advice we were given was don't even consider that today because we don't have certainty. So I'm not amending my budget, I'm just changing the narrative slightly.
Thank you, Councillor Hislop.
Chair, I'd be happy to add that in on the grounds that we are in a ever-changing situation and we may in 2 months' time not have that money. We may have it, we don't know.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It sounds like we're coming to consensus and moving closer towards the Labour budget. But the thing is, we've actually made that upfront commitment. We're now got to take those savings and we've got to actually find those savings. And obviously this additional funding we're getting from the Scottish Government will actually hopefully aid that. Can I ask you both to maybe consider, the only difference now is that we're still putting in, I think you've got 125,000 less in cost of living, and I think the SNP have got 60 million less in cost of living. So if you can consider amending your budget to that, we'll all be happy.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Ferguson.
It was actually a point of order, Chair, Convener. My recollection is that the leader moved, I think it was Councillor Hislop seconded, and that wasn't there. Okay? The point of order here is that that is their motion. So whatever they want to then come forward with later seems a wee bit opportunistic, if you'll excuse the way I've put this, because both the Labour motions and the SNP motions, and certainly that additional motion from the SNP was made before it was moved, not after.
I appreciate the distinction on that, Councillor Ferguson. Vlad, can you give us some advice on this?
Yes, thank you, Convener. I absolutely accept the kind of chronology of events. However, as members will know from custom and practice, if you've got someone who's got a motion, they can amend it subject to that seconder being in agreement to that change. And that often happens both in committees and full council. So that's an acceptable practice.
Thank you. Councillor Giusti.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to say that we're discussing semantics here. In other committees, such as planning, for example, we edit the motions quite often, adding conditions even after the motion's been passed, well, not passed, sorry, but been placed, and as a seconder. And other councillors in the room that are addressing this have been happily using that method so far.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Crothers.
Thank you very much, Convener. I think, just to put the question, I think we've been through the different motions, amendments, counter amendments. The people have had their chances to ask questions and ultimately sum up. A roll call, I think, would be the appropriate way forward. Thank you.
Yeah, if there's no further contributions, we'll... Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Mr Valente has just used the term custom and practice, which arose during the sort of the opportunity we had to try and bring the urgent motion. And it seems to me that it's been mentioned a couple of times since. I think as a council, we really need to pin that down. We need to get away from custom and practice. We need to have rules which actually guide how we behave and how we act and how we arrive at decisions, because custom and practice can be dismissed on a whim, as we saw at Westminster last week.
Yeah, that once again, I agree with you that in preparation for this meeting, I've actually raised that very point myself as to I would much prefer to see things in black and white rather than rely on custom and practice. So I agree with you on that point. Is there no further questions, in which case we'll just move to the vote. Vlad, you want to take us through that?
Yep, thank you, Convener. In terms of standard 10.2, when a motion amendment or counter amendments are before a meeting, which is the scenario we have just now, the last counter amendment shall be voted on against the second last until the position is reached, whereby a final vote shall be taken between the successful amendment and the motion. So in that regard, I'll just run through it for members' clarity, and please clarify to me if I picked anything up wrong. In terms of the motion, that's been led by the leader and seconded by Councillor Hislop, with the amendment as per the descriptor that was put on the screen from Councillor Thompson, with a slight change to that, which is to consider all options rather than simply one element of it. SNP amendment thereafter, that was Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Jameson, with an amendment as tabled and as shown on the screen to all members. And lastly, we've got the counter amendment, which is from the Labour group, and that was Councillor Wilson and seconded by Councillor Dorwood, as circulated to members, minus that slight change which was due to the 15.4. So are all members clear on that? So we'll start, as I mentioned, with the counter amendment and the amendment first and foremost, and then we'll move on from that particular vote. So if all members are clear, they're voting at this point in time between the counter and the amendment only. Okay, Convener?
Abstain.
Deputy Convener?
Abstain.
Councillor Bell?
Abstain.
Councillor Beretti?
Amendment, thank you.
Councillor Blake?
Abstain.
Councillor Brodie?
Abstain.
Councillor Doogie Campbell?
Amendment.
Councillor John Campbell?
Amendment.
Councillor Ian Carruthers?
Abstain.
Councillor Karen Carruthers?
Abstain.
Councillor Dashford?
Amendment.
Councillor Davis?
Abstain.
Councillor Dempster?
Abstain.
Councillor Denerley?
Counter.
Councillor Dorwood?
Counter amendment, please.
Councillor Drybrough?
Counter.
Councillor Drysdale?
Abstain.
Councillor Ferguson?
Amendment.
Councillor Giusti?
Abstain.
Councillor Hagman?
Amendment, please.
Councillor Hill?
Abstain, please.
Councillor Howie?
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop?
Abstain.
Councillor Ingalls?
Abstain.
Councillor Jameson?
Amendment.
Councillor Maureen Johnson?
Abstain.
Councillor Jordan?
Counter, please.
Councillor Little?
Amendment.
Councillor Lowe?
Amendment, please.
Councillor McCammon?
Abstain.
Councillor McFarlane?
Amendment.
Councillor Mayo?
Abstain.
Councillor Marsh?
Abstain.
Councillor Marshall?
Counter amendment, please.
Councillor Scobie. Councillor Slater. Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Stitt. Say that again, sorry.
Counter.
Counter. Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Amendment.
Councillor Walters.
Counter, please.
Councillor Wilson.
Counter, please.
Just bear with me while the screen catches up. Councillor Wood.
Abstain.
And Councillor Young.
Amendment.
Okay, as members will see, the amendment is carried 13 votes to 10, and therefore we move to the next vote. And if you just bear with us while the screen catches up again. So, again, just for clarity for members, we've got the motion and the amendment as previously described. Convener?
Motion.
Deputy Convener?
Motion.
Councillor Bell?
Motion.
Councillor Beretti?
Amendment.
Councillor Blake?
Motion.
Councillor Brodie?
Motion.
Councillor Doogie Campbell?
Amendment.
Councillor John Campbell?
Amendment.
Councillor Ian Carruthers?
Motion.
Councillor Karen Carruthers?
Motion.
Councillor Dashper?
Amendment.
Councillor Davis?
Motion.
Councillor Dempster?
Motion.
Councillor John Donnelly?
Abstain.
Councillor Dorward?
Amendment.
Councillor Dryber?
Amendment.
Councillor Drysdale?
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson?
Amendment.
Councillor Giusti?
Motion.
Councillor Hagman?
Amendment, please.
Councillor Howe?
Motion, please.
Councillor Howie?
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop?
Motion.
Councillor Ingalls?
Motion.
Councillor Jamieson?
Amendment.
Councillor Maureen Johnson?
Motion.
Councillor Jordan?
Amendment, please.
Councillor Little?
Amendment.
Councillor Lowe?
Amendment.
Councillor McCammon?
Motion.
Councillor McFarlane?
Amendment.
Okay. Councillor Mail?
Motion.
Councillor Marsh?
Motion.
Councillor Marshall?
Amendment.
Councillor Scobie? Councillor Slater? Councillor Stevenson?
Amendment.
Councillor Stitt?
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson?
Amendment.
Councillor Walters?
Amendment, please.
Councillor Wilson?
Amendment, please.
Councillor Wood?
Motion.
And Councillor Young.
Amendment.
Okay. As members will see, the amendments carried 22 votes to 20.
Thank you. Move on to item 7. Housing Scotland Act 2006, Scheme of Assistance 2024 to 25. Report by Director of Economy and Resources. The purpose of this report is to seek the agreement of Dumfries and Galloway Council to transfer the funding for the delivery of care and repair, the small repairs and home support service, food train at home and the dementia-friendly design project to the Integration Joint Board for 2024-25. Jamie Little, Strategic Housing Investment and Regeneration Team Leader, is available on Teams to assist members with any questions. First of all, are we happy to remove delegation from Economy and Resources to consider funding allocations to the Dumfries and Galloway IJB? Are we happy to remove delegation? Agreed. So, do we have any questions for this? Councillor Dryber?
not so much a question, Chair, but maybe a contribution. Sorry, Convener. I think what we see here is we have this every year at budget time going to the NHS, and it has to be done through our budget setting process, basically, to take that fund forward. There are a lot of third sector organisations involved in this particular delivery of the scheme of assistance, and I think it's important to realise that importance as a council and thank those organisations that are actually doing it on behalf of NHS, Dumfries and Galloway, but also on behalf of the residents out there who require that particular assistance. Happy to go with the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you. Is there any further comment or question? Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I welcome this paper that really talks or refers to aids and adaptations. Unfortunately, it doesn't allow us to look at others. This only looks at our care and repair. And Jamie and I has had many discussions, and indeed Ian Carruthers has had it, in terms of the registered social landlords that are facing the same problems. And indeed, there is a crisis in the registered social landlords in their inability to deliver aids and particularly adaptations to those that really need it. And I know Jamie's looking at it in terms of how we can lobby. I was interested in what Stephen said in his budget remarks, to make a stronger lobbying voice. I would hope that we do that, but we also do it in respect of the registered social landlords who are facing financial crisis, and that's the only reason that they're providing us with in terms of delivering adaptations. And while the paper hasn't got the ability to do that, I would hope that we would form a strong lobbying voice for the registered social landlords in terms of the money that is required to deliver adaptations to almost 50 people out there in the registered social landlord. But at the recent workshop that we attended, there are 2,000 people out there who are requiring adaptations that we can't deliver to. So this is, almost like Edinburgh and other authorities to say, we are in a housing crisis very much around adaptations, and that we recognise that and form this strong lobbying voice to the Scottish Government to get additional funding into aids and adaptations. This is going to go part of the way, which I welcome, but there's another part to it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is there any further comment? We'll just move to the recommendations. Thank you. So 2.2, the transfer of £948,000 from the Council to the Dumfries and Galloway IJB Board to IJB to support the delivery of the care and repair service as detailed at section 4.1. 2.3, to transfer £149,000 from the Council to the Dumfries and Galloway IJB to fund the small repairs and home support service as detailed at section 4.2. 2.4, to transfer £15,000 from the Council to the Dumfries and Galloway IJB to fund the dementia-friendly design project as detailed at section 4.3. 2.5, to transfer £37,400 from the Council to the Dumfries and Galloway IGB to fund food train at home as detailed at section 4.4, and 2.6, the allocation of £35,000 for the Council's Trusted Trader Scheme as detailed at section 4.5. Are we happy to agree? Items? Thank you. I understand that lunch is ready, so I think we'll take a break for about half an hour so we can reconvene at 1. Thank you. Thank you, members. Welcome back. We move on to item 8, collective agreement, proposed amendment, public holiday working, report by Director Economy and Resources. Purpose of this report is to consider proposals to amend the collective agreement in relation to public holiday working. Stuart Clanahan, HR Manager, is available on Microsoft Teams to assist members with any questions. Do we have any questions? Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Yeah, I'm really pleased with this report in the way that it's actually come some way towards addressing some of the concerns, especially with regards to the waste disposal service, and it's good that we've been able to actually negotiate improvement to terms and conditions across the council workforce. So we're making inroads into that, but I am a little bit concerned about 4.12 when it states that whilst the remuneration, etc., and the public working holidays in the package went some way towards addressing concerns, it states that the council are working separately with management to help address some of the other concerns, but not all of those concerns. So it's really just, I know some of those might be, and I know some of them from our regular kind of meetings with the trade unions, but I think because we don't want, we still haven't resolved the situation that on the bank holidays we could still have a disruption to the uplift service. So I think it would be handy for us as councillors to receive an update on what those issues are that are still unresolved, which are the issues that the council feel they cannot resolve, and maybe some timelines as to how we can get some agreement on those.
Thank you. Stuart, can you help out with any of that at the moment?
Thank you, Convener. I'm happy to take the point from the member and refer it back to the service. Senior Manager Stephen Hall is leading on that work to support the workforce and look into that. So I'm happy to take that back and refer it back to members at some point in the near future. Thanks, Convener.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks, Convener, and also welcome this report as well. I think it took I think we were consistent last year in sort of pushing for this information to come back. I know there was maybe a wishfulness about maybe being relying on goodwill, etc. But I think we really needed to get in about this to actually start to address some of the wider issues across all the sectors of the council that are affected by this. So good to see it there. I think one of the things last year that brought this to our attention more so was additional extraordinary public holidays, obviously relating to coronations and funerals and whatnot. So I'm just thinking, does this also pertain to that? Because that was maybe some of the additional context that maybe made this more of an issue than it otherwise could have been. So just to get that assurance, please.
Thank you. Stuart.
Yes, happy to confirm that it covers all of these extra holidays that are added to the annual calendar, as well as our normal public holiday arrangements. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Convener. Just a question about timescales, if I may. This issue was raised last May and was seen as urgent then in terms of making sure that our residents get their bins collected at the right time and making sure that the T's and C's of our lowest paid staff are addressed as quickly as possible. It's taken almost a year to come to full council. And I'm wondering if you can explain why this fairly simple issue, not the other ones that Councillor Marshall's mentioned, which does consider our lowest paid staff, has taken nearly a year to come to full council. And when you compare this to the extremely complex Chief Officer's restructuring process, which has sailed through full council without a hitch in a matter of months, would you agree it's evident this administration is dragging its feet when it comes to T's and C's for our lowest paid staff and accelerating timescales for T's and C's for our highest paid senior managers? Thank you.
Thank you. Stuart, is there any reason why this has taken so long?
I can add, Convener, that obviously detailed preparatory work was done. Benchmarking is also a tedious action that we need to take forward. Obviously, full council were presented with information, both I think in May and October last year. And the Christmas public holiday is not affected by these new arrangements, and therefore, as long as we have a full proposal in front of members before the forthcoming Easter break, then we can implement it for all of the workforce from agreement if it's secured today by full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Convener. Councillor Dauber's quite correct in saying that it came to the notice of administration in May last year, but having a very good authority that it came to the attention of the previous administration well back into the previous year, and there are email communications that can be available in that respect. So I think we've got to remember that it's not the fact that we just sat in our hands doing nothing after May. This was well known to the previous administration well back into 2022, but we've taken it on board and we've brought it forward and we've got it to this stage in time for the public holidays this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Is there any further questions? No. I think it's gone down. So if there's no further questions, we'll move to the recommendations. Members are asked at 2.1 to note the discussions and formal consultation with the Scottish Joint Council, Joint Trade Unions, with the aim of securing agreement to amend the collective agreement for public holiday working set out at paragraph 4.14. 2.2, note the formal responses to the consultation from the Joint Trade Unions included as appendices 1, 2 and 3, and 2.3, agree the proposed amendments to the collective agreement, appendix 4, which enhance public holiday working for the Council's workforce and which would take immediate effect. So we're happy to note 1 and 2 and agree 3. Thank you. Item 9, UK Government Levelling Up Programme, Dumfries Long-Term Town Plan, report by Head of Economy and Development. This report presents members with an update on the UK Government's long-term plan for towns and the inclusion of Dumfries in this Levelling Up programme. It also highlights further information published by the UK Government on the programme and follows a report to Economy and Resources Committee on 30th of January 2024. Following consultation with political groups and community engagement, members are also provided with information on nominations for the role of an independent chair of the Town Board for consideration. Members are also asked to consider the nomination of 2 local elected members and 2 substitutes to the Town Board. Stuart McMillan, Strategic Economic Investment Manager, is here to assist members with any questions. And I'll just open with an observation of my own that I find it difficult with the list of people that we have here that we have quite limited information on which potentially to make a decision. But that's my personal viewpoint, and I think perhaps we're needing to be provided with more information which should be brought to perhaps a special meeting in the near future. But is there anyone else with any questions? Councillor Drybrough.
Convener, I wouldn't disagree with what you've actually said there. I mean, when we ever have employment appeals, we have CVs, people have been through it. Now, it's not going to be as large as that, but, you know, I think anybody who's going to be a town board chair needs to understand what the responsibilities and accountabilities are. I'm sure other members of my group have got things to say, but I don't disagree with what you've said.
Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Convener. Yes, I concur with what you're saying. I must admit I'm quite surprised that they have a list of people who, in business myself, usually have we get their CVs in and we speak to them and we ask what their future, what they want to do in the future, what they'll bring to the table in that, and then we will make a decision as to who probably gets the job to fill our team. Now, this has not happened here. It's like saying, here's a group of people, and then we'll turn the lights off and you pick one. Now, I don't know some of these people. I can't vote for people I don't know. They need to have CVs, they need to be interviewed. This is a very important job. It's £20 million over 10 years, and they have to realise these people
coming into it, it is a very important job, but they need to have the qualifications and they need to have good skills as regarding making good decisions, costings, things like that's very important as well, and keeping good books as well. So there's a lot of issues here that I personally, without that information in front of us, I can't vote on any of these people. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Chair. Maybe you mentioned bringing it to a special meeting. Maybe it should be brought back to this, delegated to Nistal Area Committee, because Nistal Area Committee we're just getting boring reports, reporting mechanisms, and reports that were done about 6 months ago. So it certainly give the area members something to discuss and debate. So, and the decision is going to affect us locally.
Thank you. Councillor Mayo.
It was the same point, Chair. I really believe this belongs to the area committee where this is set, even if it's got to come back here as a final decision. But I think that's where it should go, and they should have the right to do the proper scrutiny and come up with what they see as the best person for the job.
Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Convener. No, I just concur with what Councillor Bell has said, and it might also be useful if we delegate to the Nistal Area Committee the 2 elected members to be on the board and the 2 substitutes. It would keep a local focus on what is a very important local project. So I'll certainly concur with that view.
Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Convener. I must admit, I agree with the previous speakers. I think that we don't have the correct information to make this information, to make this decision, I should say. I've no difficulty with the area committee being involved, although it was suggested earlier about the employment appeals, but that was probably not appropriate. I'm not so sure it's appropriate, or it could be appropriate, because at least the members are trained, they're trained in interview techniques and how to conduct an interview and how to understand a proper CV. It's a very difficult one, but I really share your concerns on this particular item.
Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Convener. And I agree with pretty much everything that's been said so far. There is an area committee on the 13th of March, and perhaps it would be sensible to take a report to Nistal Area Committee to get the area committee to make recommendations to the next full council on the 26th of March. That would still give us time to convene the board in the couple of days after the 26th of March and meet the 1st of April deadline, which UK government are looking for. But I do think it's important that the decision is made by members who are within the locality, or a recommendation is made by them, which can then be ratified by full council for completeness.
Councillor Andy Ferguson.
Thanks very much, Convener. This will be a bit like deja vu, because I'm sure I moved the ENR committee actually to do this. It seems like a wee bit now flying by the seat of the pants, or are we just folding in here to social media, or what is it? Right? What's changed since that ENR meeting? That's a serious question, because that was certainly what we moved forward at ENR, and it was, if I remember rightly, was it now voted down? Because it wasn't agreed. Some of it was agreed, but the bit we got through was in actual fact yes, and was to involve the area committee and everything else, and it was then in officers, if I remember correctly, to come back with how they were going to implement that. And as far as I'm aware, it's not been area committee yet. So I'm in agreement with you, Convener, is this needs to go back. We did say at the ENR committee that March was ample time, right? Because I'm sure the officers could have the report ready just to press the print button after the March meeting. So it's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Thank you, Councillor. I made the same comments at the ENR meeting that I made today, and my recollection was we were to involve Nistal Area Committee and more in a kind of community type event. But I don't think we moved it. It was to go to the committee as such. But I think that is the direction of travel that I think we should be going down. And I agree with you, Andy.
Can I come back in, Convener? Yeah, I think you're right, and I suppose we're guilty of not being prescriptive enough. So we'll cross the T's and double dot the I's next time round.
Thank you. No, Councillor Dougie Campbell was on the list first.
Thanks, Convener. In the spirit of true democracy, which I've got my doubts about, I think that this is a matter for the people of Dumfries. We've all been in receipt of emails from constituents who wish to put forward their own preferred candidate, and I would propose that we take this to a local vote and let the people choose.
Thank you. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you. I think it's just addressing Councillor Ferguson's point. You're absolutely right. It was suggested that there would be a community event through area committee. I think what's fundamentally changed for me now was that I expected to see more information about each candidate, and I think that that's the difficulty that I have. We're aware that the nominations closed on Monday night, and then staff had to do a quick phone around the potential nominees to ascertain whether they were willing to do it or not. So there was a wee bit of checking and balances with that. Thereafter, I expected a flow of information. We haven't got that, so that's why I feel it's important we defer, but also that area committee has a view that they can then recommend to full council. We still have time to meet the 1st of April deadline. And the process has not been great, let's be honest.
Can we allow first speakers in? Can governments ensure that first speakers are allowed in before we give people a second chance to speak?
Thank you. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. But as the point was made by Councillor Marshall, I'll defer to my colleague, if possible, Councillor Walters, who has had his hand up for about the last 5 minutes, and then I'll speak after him. Thank you.
It's actually, I'm looking at the list on the screen, and there's obviously an error with that. Councillor Walters.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. I'm not going to repeat a lot of what people have said, but I would agree that the process has been unfortunate, to say the least. You know, it's a typical rushed Tory plan in some ways. It's pushing something top down. It's pretending it's a long-term plan when it's only sort of short-term. And there's this fiasco of choosing a chair for a board that doesn't exist, which, you know, I don't think many community groups would be acting in that way. However, I would congratulate the council officers on arranging consultation events that were well prepared and well thought through, because I went to the one in the mid-steeple, and it was really, really well organised, and the people who were there were able to give their feedback in a reasonable way. I noticed that when you were nominating people, either nominating yourself or nominating other people, there was a half a page for people to write why they thought these people should be nominated. And I'm really surprised that some sort of either summing up of those nominations or the actual nominations himself hasn't come to this meeting. You know, it does seem ridiculous that we're being asked to make a decision, which is what we're being asked to do, on basically just a list of names. And as Councillor Campbell said, that doesn't really seem very democratic in terms of just choosing from a list of names. So I suppose the question is then, what's the alternative? And the alternative is to push it to the next Nithsdale Area Committee meeting or the next full council meeting, or to have an emergency meeting with just that one single thing on the agenda, because that shouldn't be beyond us. Perhaps we could try and make sure that the people who want to become the chair board are prepared to come and talk to us about that. You know, it does seem ridiculous that we're not giving them the chance to actually question somebody, when if somebody wants to make an objection to a planning, for instance, they have to, a member of the public or whatever, they have to come and speak, and they're expected to answer questions from the planning committee. So I think somebody who wants to be this very responsible position, they should be prepared to come and speak to either the Nithsdale Area Committee or to the council itself. That's me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Criller.
Leader, covered my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Stuart, could you come in, because we're heading in the direction of asking for another meeting and this being taken to Nithsdale Area Committee and potentially coming back to full council for ratification. Can you just talk us through the logistics and timelines of that and basically how we can make that happen?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I'll try and help just with some advice, really just about what the guidance that we are working to from the UK government sets out. And yeah, the concentration is very much on having the first meeting of the board prior to the 1st of April, on or prior to the 1st of April. And then considering who the chair should be, that chair, one of the first things that chair should do is work with the council to establish what the correct setup and proportionate setup of that board should be. So the chair plays a role in assembling the board at the outset. So from the point at which that chairperson is confirmed as invited and is confirmed as that person will be the chair, they will have to then have a period of time to work with us to get invitations out to assemble the board. So invitations going out, would you like to be a board member? Our first meeting is going to be on the evening of whatever date it is. So we would have a very quick turnaround. And I think as the leader said, there is a little bit of time, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that that is narrowing all the time, given the emphasis that the chair does have a role to play in determining who should sit around the board table as well. I hope that's clear and helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. And I believe full council is actually the 28th of March. So it is very tight. We would probably need to call a special meeting, unless we were happy to delegate the decision to Nithsdale Area Committee. So, Councillor Drysdale.
Thanks very much. It was just to point out, I know there's a lot of people listening to the meeting today and we're all taking these valid points on board. We are asking people within our communities time and time again at the moment to take on voluntary unpaid positions. So I think as councillors in this room and as the council, we need to acknowledge and appreciate everybody that's applied for this position, no matter what decision we come to today. Thank you.
Thank you. So, is there any more first-time speakers wishing to contribute? Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Convener. Is just on the process of the report itself. We have all spent long and weary talking about Annex 4, which is the list of nominations, which we have a problem with because we don't have any information backing that. But does this report itself not go through quite a strict scrutiny and governance process? So should this not have been picked up before it came to full council? Would be my question to the administration. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it is something that should have been addressed. Councillor Hislop.
Could Mr Macmillan clarify a point for me? What is the quorum for the board? Because if we have to have the full board in place by the 1st of or the 31st of March, if they have the meeting done before the 1st of April, are we allowing ourselves time for an appointed chair, whichever date, whether it's the next full council or next area committee, to actually assemble that board? Or do we only need the chairman, elected members, MPs, etc.? And is that equivalent of having the board and then we can assemble the full board after the first meeting?
Stuart, can you help us with the quorum on these issues?
I can't specifically help with what would be the quorum number on the board, and it's maybe something that we would have to look at with our colleagues in governance. But Councillor Hislop is absolutely right that the minimum specification of the board, I suppose, within the guidance is that there is an independent chair, that the MP or the MP's representative is there, 2 elected representatives from the council, a senior police representative, and then beyond that, representation can be flexible. And as I was making the point earlier on, that's the role of the chair to work with the council to ascertain who those individuals would be. So I think there's a perspective that could be taken to say, well, the specified minimum representation is in the guidance. It's those people with those roles, etc. But I think we'd have to look at a complete terms of reference to be scripted out for the board with help of our colleagues in governance and communities.
Thank you. Councillor Little.
It's just a point to remind everyone about inclusive language. Chairperson, not chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Crowther, quickly.
No, sorry, I'll leave you to it.
Thank you. Councillor Blake wants to come back in. We're on to second speakers now. Second time we've had that. Everybody's had a go first.
Thank you, convener. I can assure you I'm not going to have a go. It's just given the importance of this, the size of the investment, the long-term prospects of this investment, and we have serious concerns about the information that we're getting in the short term. Has any consideration been given to applying for an extension to this process? I appreciate until we get an answer for that we should maybe still go down the lines of looking to get it to an area committee, etc. But the first thing I would do was ask for an extension. So because of the concerns that we've all have. Thank you.
Stuart, is there any possibility of an extension?
We've sought clarification on that already, convener, to no reply as yet from the department. But just at the moment an assertion that there is the expectation by the 1st of April that the board will have met for the first time.
Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, convener. I think asking for an extension would be the wrong message to send out from this council. You'd be telling the folk in Dumfries, you get £20 million coming and you don't know quite how to spend it. The point I was wanting to make, though, convener, was that all of these individuals that are featured in the list as being willing to become chair and have been contacted, and I know interrogated isn't the word that's or the language that's in the paper, but why could we not ask each of them if they would want to be part of the board or form the board? Therefore, you already have a board within people that have been interviewed, said they'd be willing to be part of this process and clearly keen to be involved. So you could, in essence, establish a board at Nithsdale Area Committee, if that's where the delegation is going to go, as well as decide on a chairman. And there would still be spaces left for others should they want to put their name forward to form, I take it, a 12-person board that will be a sort of scale that you'd imagine it for the type of project and the length of project it is. But that's just a suggestion, convener.
Thank you. Stuart, can you confirm if my recollection of the procedure is that we first have to appoint a chair and then it's the chair that basically decides the board?
Yes, I can confirm that, convener. Yeah. And there's no specified number of people to sit on the board, but the government has also just has indicated to us that they would just as a rule of thumb want to ensure that no more than a third of the board are formed of elected representatives taken from councillors, MP, MSPs, etc. So we have a working proportion. So depending on the number of elected representatives on the board, should be no more than a third.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson, do you want to come back in?
Yes, thanks. Stuart kind of has just covered a wee bit what I was going to come in and say, convener. My understanding is that it's up to, I think Stuart just confirmed it's up to 30% of the board should be elected either councillors or MPs. And I notice in the paper it's the MSPs at the councils, whether the council want to agree or not. So we're needing more time on this, absolutely. I'm not going to revisit the argument of the ENR committee, but it's still the same. It's still the same problem here. Is the people in the town don't really know who some of these people are, who've got names down as potentials. There's nothing in there that actually says, well, what we've done and what we've... Some of them have been contacting some of us, but not all of us. So the whole process is really very flawed, I would suggest. And I think one of the decisions we'll need to make, if we are going to put it to the area committee, is, if I remember correctly, the original concept here was the two MPs were to be the ones sitting on this, and then the discussion led it to MSPs as well. But if you start doing that, and then there's somebody for the police, and then that's you up to minimum 3, maybe 4, plus the police is 5, and the chair's 6. So you're then talking a committee of heading up towards 20 people. You know, you're into ridiculous stages then. Or do we run with smaller numbers than that? Because to be fair, that is the maximum it would be if we were to include the two MSPs in the equation. So, or if we took the two MSPs out, then we'd allow greater representation for the people, but it would take it forward. So I mean, it's a dog's dinner, and I think I'd be really quite keen for the two MPs to be there, because then I'll be political here. The people in Dumfries might actually get to see their MP.
Councillor Thompson.
It's on that point, but slightly less political. So just in terms of representation, it does say that the guidance is that no more than a third would be elected representatives, and that's a rule of thumb. So as soon as you've got two MPs, a couple of MSPs potentially, and 2 councillors, that's 6. So your board's going to have to be 18, eh? So that's 12 members of the public. As soon as you start adding to that, you're basically adding another 2 on to the members of the public for every person you add on to the elected members. So I think we need to be careful about how many people we think should be on it that are elected for that very reason, but Councillor Ferguson's kind of covered it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's actually really down to the chair, because I mean, what we're being asked to do here is agree that we consult local MPs and local MSPs. We're being asked to agree the nomination of 2 elected members and 2 nominated substitutes for the town board, and we're also being asked to nominate the chair. Can you give us clarity on that? What role has the MPs and MSPs got, Stuart?
Thanks, Convener. So the MP, or the MPs in our case, are specified in the UK government guidance as being required to sit on the board. The guidance talks about MSPs and members of the Welsh Parliament as well, being at the discretion of the discretion of the local authorities in terms of being able to be invited on, and a bit of this was discussed at the ENR committee as well. So it is at our discretion that MSPs are also invited onto the board, but the local MPs are prescribed as having to be on the board.
Thank you. Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Convener. I had lots of notes at ENR, and I won't repeat those comments made. But one of those, which I still am unsure of where we're at, is there's issues around the fact that we're supporting place planning, and certainly there seems to be a huge amount of overlap. So without going down that road, because I appreciate we've got a task on hand here, I'm too, like many others, I'm really uncomfortable. I don't know the people on the board. I'm also not a representative of Dumfries Town itself, so I wouldn't feel comfortable with voting for anyone. But how have the other 6 local authorities within Scotland that have also got this funding, how have they taken this forward? Because I appreciate, I think, Stuart, you had mentioned previously that you're in dialogue with the other 6 towns, And have they got a way forward? Have they appointed their boards? Are we behind? I think it would just be quite useful to know how others are taking this forward, because it's really, really unclear. Thanks.
Stuart, how are other towns taking this forward?
I think most of us are in exactly the same position, having these meetings, either full council meetings or cabinet meetings, whatever their governance process that they've decided to go through, seem to be happening over this week and next week. The only authority that I'm aware that has actually made an appointment of a chair, there are two, Western Bartonshire and Murray, and both I think have gone to. There's again within the government guidance, there's a list of examples of types of people who might be able to fulfil the role of chair. For example, the head of the further education college, if that exists in the town, is embedded in the town, and those two authorities have used that list as a bit more of a prescribed way. But that is at the discretion of each council to make its decision as to which method of decision making it would like to pursue.
Thank you. Councillor Slater, you wanted to come back in?
Yes, Convener. As I said before, you need to get somebody brand new in this post, because for far too long we've been in the magic roundabout with Zebedee and Dougal going roundabout, and we need to get off the roundabout. So you need somebody with good business track record, good vision, think out the box strategy. All these things are needed, and good costing, somebody who's good at costing as well, that's important. And one other point about expenses, there's something said about that, but I believe that some groups have said that they could probably help with that, but I believe that should go to a professional accountancy company where once a month they'll give the councils back a briefing note of how things are going, because that's very important to keep track of budgets, because if you lose a budget by 6 months, it's very rare you can pull it back before the end of the year. So somebody brand spanking new, because we've had too much of the old hat stuff and the old guard. That's my view in the whole matter. You need to get this right. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Councillor John Campbell.
Thanks, Convener, as a first-time speaker on this report. I've got 3 points. The first point, obviously, was my namesake, Councillor Dougie Campbell. I kind of agree with him. You know, when you start adding MPs, MSPs, councillors into these sort of things, it gets a bit messy. I think it should be up to the local communities to drive this forward. However, the guidance has come from the Level It Up, so we have to apply that principle. The second point is we've got a map. Again, this came from the Levelling Up department. It outlines a fair chunk of Dumfries, not necessarily the town of Dumfries, but there are areas in there that are excluded. You know, you've got Lockerbriggs, Heath Hall, for example, and possibly even Cargill Bridge. Now, I think most locals would consider that being part of the town of Dumfries. But we are where we are with that particular map. But related to that map, because it does make reference that local MPs, now with the new boundary changes that's coming into place, is it one MP that's been, I see the leader is nodding their head, as opposed to 2 MPs, so that kind of clarifies that point on there. The final point, if I may, Convener, and I know we're just going around in circles here, we may need to get to the recommendations, is that on page 39 we've got the timeline. So the timeline says by the 1st of August that the town board should submit the long-term plans, and then Levelling Up will conduct an assessment and, when approved, release investment funding. I just want a wee bit of clarity on, would that be before the general election or after the general election? Thank you, Convener.
Stuart, I think we're looking for a commitment that this money's coming regardless of the outcome of any general election.
the discussion that we've had with the civil servants has been on the basis of a number of comments that actually were received during our consultations across the town in the last couple of weeks, which has been about will this funding be sustained over the 10 years? Can a government that is sitting in place at the moment be able to absolutely commit that for the next 10 years that the endowment payment will come? And the response that we've always had from the civil servants has been that this policy initiative has broad cross-party support in Parliament in Westminster, and so they've done everything they can to build that sort of cohesive approach to it, so that they hope that, yes, if there are changes in administration over the course of the 10 years, not just the immediate prospect of a general election, but maybe subsequent general elections over that 10-year period, that it does sustain itself because of that cross-party build of the policy.
Thank you. Are you reassured, Councillor Campbell?
Yes.
Thank you. Right, we are going round in circles here, so we need to kind of outline some options as to how we're planning to take this forward. Is it anything that's not been raised before and not been raised at E&R committee? Because, to be quite frank, we've heard it all.
I'll say now what I was going to say about 20 minutes ago, that I proposed. We know at 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. When we get to 2.4, taking into consideration everything that we've heard today around the table, I think we've got a reasonable cross-party agreement in regards to it, but I'll be corrected, I'll stand corrected if what I'm going to say here is out of kilter, but we recommend that there's a special area committee held, potentially, I would say, but a recommendation for the Nistile Area Committee would come back to a special meeting of the full council or the next full council in regards to who the nomination are, and let them work out the processes, whether it's through a referendum type vote or whether it's through whatever type of process they want to use, an employment appeals type of process, get the extra CV or background information in regards to the candidates themselves coming forward. But if we leave that to the area committee as a 2.4 and 2.5, we've seen that come back to full council for final ratification in an appropriate timeline that fits as the board being in place by the end of March.
Councillor Ingalls.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. We're asked in this paper to consider the nominations for the chair of the town board. We've consulted, we've went out, and we have nominations to consider for the chair of the town board. And I think it's appropriate that consideration comes from the local elected members in Dumfries that are impacted by this £20 million. However, it seems to be dragging out and dragging out and dragging out. We have a responsibility to our constituents to make decisions like this. So can the elected members who are going to be affected by this grant take 15 minutes to discuss the applicants that we've got? They probably know them anyway, and make a decision based on that.
As a town centre councillor and a long-term business person in Dumfries, and I've been round this town for decades and decades, and I'll freely admit I don't know everybody on that list. I couldn't actually make a decision based on that list. Councillor Dryburgh?
Yeah, I think we're happy to go along with going back to area committee, Chair, and the issue is that if you know somebody, there's a potential for unconscious bias. And if you have that unconscious bias, we get as elected members, when we're doing this type of thing, we kept getting told not to have that unconscious bias in place. So I think it's appropriate to go back to the root suggestion.
Thank you. Councillor Dempster?
I'm happy with that. I think it's the right thing to do, and I wouldn't argue with that. The only thing is we need some direction from full council, because there was a suggestion that we invite these people, whoever they might be, the candidates, to make a presentation. So we would need that direction from you, that delegation from you. And if we're doing that, and it'd be Councillor Maureen Johnson as the chair of the Nistile Area Committee to decide what we do, but the Planning Applications Committee are very strict on the amount of time a speaker gets. And these applicants, if they're invited, should get advance warning, which would come from here. Or alternatively, my view would be that we would not invite speakers, but that's a personal view. It would be up to the National Area Committee in general, provided they got that direction from the full council that that could be part of the process. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you. Vlad, do you have any thoughts on where we go with this?
Thank you, Convener. Just in terms of trying to be helpful and trying to summarise the position for members, it's quite clear that members are of a view that you don't have enough information to proceed today, and I think that's the kind of summary on that, particularly in regards to that 2.4 within the report. Accordingly, there's been a few options that have been mentioned by members, so just maybe give a bit of context around some of those. The one option is to defer this to a special meeting of the council in which that information would be provided. I should also just add within that if we are looking at further information being provided by each candidate, we are looking at an exempt report for that part of it. So you could by all means have the final decision in public, but in terms of deliberations and considerations of the various applications or CVs, the exempt part of the 73 Act would apply in regards to that office holder or candidate for office holder. So a special meeting in the council could be managed, and we could possibly get a date in potentially for next week, subject to applicants being in a position to also put their applications and summaries down. In terms of another option which is mentioned is that it should go to area committee first and foremost, and potentially for area committee to consider and then recommend to full council. That is potentially doable in terms of the National Committee being on the 13th of March. However, we might struggle, and I would need to look at the dates around finding a special meeting of the council thereafter, but we can try and work around the meeting and calendar that we've currently got in order to accommodate that. The other option is that has been mentioned by members is to delegate the actual decision making to area committee on that date. So those are the three options really for consideration in terms of taking it forward, and it's just what full council wishes thereafter.
Leader.
Yeah, I think we're slightly overcomplicating things. And for me, it's very clear that the composition of the initial board, once we do determine a chair, would be probably one MP because of the boundary change. Yes, absolutely. MSPs would be in our gift. There'd be 2 councillors and the police. So as long as they meet before the 1st of April, that is the first board meeting done. And that ticks the box for the UK government's criteria. Thereafter, we need to give time to the new board chair and officers and in consultation with the public to make sure that we have the right representation on that board. We don't want to do this on a whim and very quickly. And I think that if we were to take a report to area committee, I think that anybody who wishes to sit on, as chair of that board should be quite happy for their information to be in the public domain anyway. Certainly a lot of it's on Facebook already, so I'm not sure why we would need to take that as an exempt if they give us permission to put that in a report to area committee. Local area committees make a strong recommendation which comes to full council on the 26th. No need for an expensive special meeting. And then we ensure that a first board meeting is scheduled for one of those days immediately after the 26th. And that ensures that we've got the right process for local members to make a decision, that we've ratified it, and that it ticks the box for the UK government. It seems fairly straightforward to me.
Thank you, Leader. The meeting of full council is the 28th. Though. Ian Crothers. Councillor Crothers.
Thanks very much for letting me come back in, Convener. I would agree about my thoughts were very much it should be led by local people. Let the area committee decide that, so we refer it to the area committee and leave the timelines in regards to calling the special meetings to it'd be the chair and this deal area committee along with the vice chair, along with yourself and the leader for the full council. If we have to call 2 special meetings, then but it's I think we've had enough debate today have a way forward. We want to make sure that it goes back to the local people. We're absolutely clear about that. So put it back in the hands of the local people through the Nistdale Area Committee, let it come back here for final ratification within the appropriate timelines. Hopefully that can be scripted in such a way that it forms a competent motion.
Councillor Maureen Johnston.
Thank you, Convener. It was just as Chair of the Nistdale Area Committee, I would be quite happy to take this back to the Nistdale Area Committee, but each candidate to submit, each nomination to submit a written report of the reasons for going forward for Chair of the Board, and we could at that meeting decide, perhaps even make the decision as to who was going to be the Chair of the Board with local members of the Nistdale Area Committee. Thank you, if that was agreeable.
Thank you. I have to say that my view would be if we're delegating it to the Nistdale Area Committee, we delegate it to the Nistdale Area Committee. And don't bring it back for ratification. We just delegate to Nistdale Area Committee. That would be my view. Councillor Cruthers?
Just the one caveat I put in there, for some reason they don't come to an agreement, then it would have to come back here, and that's why I left that open-ended in that way. So if they say there is a confusion or for whatever reason, disruption, whatever it may be, and Nistdale Area Committee doesn't want to make a decision for different reasons, it would have to end up. We need to make that decision in an appropriate timeline before the 31st of March, / 1st April.
Thank you. So, going forward, Councillor Lowe.
Thank you. Can I just ask that the information that we receive, given the inboxes that we've had for the last week or so, that we very clearly define for these people what we want to know and the length of words, and just make it very clear what we are asking, so we've all got the same level of information from everybody. I quite agree. I think Nistdale Area Committee is the place to go, but given the length of emails that we've been receiving, it's got to be the right information that we receive. Thanks.
Thank you. So, Councillor Dempster.
I can just congratulate members of the council for making a brave decision, and it's a breath of fresh air to have a Nistdale or any area committee make a decision, and that's indeed what the purpose of the area committee was when it was established or the area committee system when it was established many years ago.
Thank you. So I'm going to move to the recommendation, well, the first three anyway, because I think at least we can agree on that. At 2.1, we're asked to note the information contained in section 4 of the report regarding the UK Government's announcement of its long-term plan for towns, for which Dumfries will benefit from £20 million of funding over 10 years from 2024 to 25. 2.2, note the requirement and timescales to appoint a chair, establish a town board and prepare a long-term plan for Dumfries as set out in section 4.5 to 4.8. 2.3, note the consultation with political groups and the community engagement activity undertaken to draw up a long list of individuals to be considered for the role of independent chair of the town board set out at paragraphs 4.5.6 to 4.5.7. Now we move on to 2.4. We to a certain extent considered the applications, but we are moving forward to delegate authority to Nistdale Area Committee to carry out the consideration of the candidates on full information being provided in a consistent basis across all candidates. And then the area committee will then agree as required the UK government guidance. Local MPs are consulted, in addition to consult local MPs as set out in 4.5.7. and 2.6, agree the nomination of 2 elected members, but we're delegating authority to Nistdale Area Committee to carry that out. Councillor Ferguson, do you want to come in?
Yes, I'm not sure whether officers can do this in time for that meeting or not, but I think we really need to go back to the UK government and ask them to reconsider their map, because the 3 biggest developments coming in the next months will be excluded, including the new master plan for Lochside and the housing developments out the Edinburgh Road. Well, they will not be there, and that will actually join Locher Briggs and Heath Hall onto the rest of the town. So it'll be just a straightforward through. So it's a plea. Can we ask them just to reconsider that boundary so that people moving from in the town just now, as this map is, to outside, aren't going to be not able to access any of the services that are going to be put in place using this money.
Stuart, can you confirm if that map is definitive?
Thanks, Convener. So the map is the Office of National Statistics understanding of what the locality of Dumfries is. They have said that the town board can ask for modifications to that map, and that should happen as soon as possible, really. So that's probably one of the very first agenda items on the first meeting of the town board would be to say, are we happy with this definition of Dumfries, and or are we not, and for what reason do we ask for a change? But the request has to come from the town board. I would suggest, though, that if that is the strong feeling of council, that we can at least put a marker down to the civil servants that may well be the case for Dumfries, but it formally has to come from the board.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just a very quick one. I've no issue particularly with where this is going. I feel that the report should have been ready to make a decision on before it came here today. But anyway, that's history now. But just in terms of delegation and housekeeping, so area committees don't necessarily have an explicit delegation, much as though they maybe should do, to make decisions of this nature, particularly unless it's appointments to outside bodies with a capital O&B, which is on a recognised list of outside bodies, which the town board currently isn't. So I'm just sort of wondering, does that mean there's a special dispensation to Nithsdale Area Committee as a result of the decision we might take today to have that within its delegations so it can properly make the decision? And will that be something that we'll look at through the review of standing orders? So it's just a technical thing, but could I ask that through the governance officer, please?
Thank you. Vlad, can you help out with that?
I'll try. Thank you, Convener. I think full council has ultimate authority, and therefore full council can decide how to delegate that authority at any specific time. And I think as long as the specifics around this are clear to all members in terms of that decision, that can be done, and it doesn't require that change as such in terms of that standing orders agreement delegation. It's a very specific delegation on one specific matter and one issue.
Councillor Little.
Thank you, Convener. It was just to say that while designing the city status bid a couple of years ago, the boundary was, we did move the boundary then to incorporate some other places. So it was just to say that we have done that before for specific things regarding the actual town.
Thank you. So are we happy to move forward as described? Councillor Dempster.
Just one thought, and hopefully the last thing before we go to the determination, Convener. There will probably be a Royal Borough of Dumfries map somewhere. There will be local government boundaries, and there's also the Council Local Development Plan LDP2. We'll be in the process of moving to LDP3, and that should take place, I think, in the next 5 years. So it might be prudent, and it would be something for the delegated committee to determine, but it might be prudent that the LDP2 is the map we choose because it's the local development plan boundary for Dumfries. And then if there are areas out with the local development plan, that can be taken into account when LDP3 comes through, and the board can then go to the government, and as the officer said, you can look for amendments to the boundary at that time. That's the only suggestion, Convener.
Yeah, thank you. So are we happy, as I said, to note 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3 and agree to delegate authority to Nithsdale Area Committee for the rest of the recommendations? Are we happy at that? Agreed. Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Are we saying that we are delegating responsibility for the identification of elected members to that committee as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we're happy to agree that. Good. So any other business deemed urgent by the chair due to the need for a decision? Of no business deemed urgent due to the need for a decision. Item 11, Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Members are asked to consider adoption of a resolution to exclude the public from the meeting in terms of Section 50A4, Paragraph 1 of Part 1 of Schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Are we happy to do that? Right, thank you.